Boom! Yeah. What it is, YOUTUBE. Uh-huh. How you all been doing out there? Me, I've been fabulous, you all. I've been fabulous. It is my hopes that from the last time I saw you all, that you all have been doing absolutely great. Me, I have been bending the map, as always. But I still been posting things on the Mo Show Chicago. But be looking out, like tonight, I want to post a slew of videos, maybe 3 in particular, of me scaling and hiking the Red Rock Canyon in Nevada. First time you ever seen this. Yeah, and that was, about 2 weeks ago. Yeah, I've been gone for I haven't did it live in like a week, but I've been bending maps, okay? But we're here on Carter G. Woodson, The Mis-Education of the Negro, Part 5. And if you all have not gotten up to part, which you should have because I gave you a couple of days to do so, okay? So if you haven't researched it, and if this is your first time in the lab, who's that in there? Rolex in the building, 100. Appreciate that, family. Someone is out there, okay? Someone is out there. But we're going to move straight into this live, and I thank you all for the appreciation you all have had for this great music that I've had. And if you want to hear this, you can go on the MOPOWERZ channel here and go up on the uploads. You'll find a whole lot of other different music, even genres that you can listen to while watching some great video behind it, okay? And that's just for this channel. But moving on to chapter 5 in the Mis-Education of the Negro by Carter G. Woodson, the failure to learn to make a living. The failure to learn to make a living. Now, we've already discussed how Black people, as Carter G. Woodson describes it, we've been reduced to preachers and teachers. What do you think about that? Do you think that Black people have actually been reduced to preachers and teachers versus thinkers? Because I've always told you that real people, especially religious people, hate thinkers, not real people. Let me extract that. Because real people are thinkers. It is the religious people that hate thinkers. Think about that. Even those who have you mentally captivated, they also, want you to see you in that condition. But moving on to chapter 5, the failure to learn and make a living. The greatest indictment of such education as Negroes have received, however, is that they may have thereby learn little as to make a living. The first essential in a civilization is how to earn a living. Rural Negroes have always known something about agriculture, and in a country where land is abundant, they have been able to make some sort of living on the soil, even though they have not always employed scientific methods of learning. You got that? An industry where the competition is keener, however, what the Negro has learned in school has had little bearing on the situation. As pointed out above, in business, the role of education as a factor in the uplift of the Negro has been still less significant. The Negroes of today are unable to employ one another. And this book was written in 19 what? 33? And this day says what? The Negroes of today are unable to employ one another. However, to add to that, in DC Mall, you have all of these Black women who've opened up businesses. Yeah, in DC Mall, it's like 10 of them. I'm just saying. But we have yet found a way to employ ourselves. You go to school, you get an education. What do? Go get a job. You have a master's degree. You have a master's degree, yet you go to school, yet you go to the workforce to get a job, yet you have a master's degree. If you're a master, shouldn't you be employing people? Shouldn't you be a real entrepreneur? If you're a master and you have a master's degree, yet I find that those very people who have master's degrees and PhDs have still not figured out a way to get us, you, me, people that look like you out of the condition that they're in. How many Black doctors do we have? How many, people that look like you are lawyers that have master's degrees, engineer degrees? And if there aren't many, that should make you want that even more. And even in the book, he said that we use methods that were not scientific. You know why it's not scientific? Because we're rooted in that which we are doing. You have a direct connection, whether you believe it or not, especially if you are the first people on the planet. But we have been miseducated, as we've just read in the first paragraph of this book. Carter G. Woodson, The Mis-Education of the Negro. And the whites are inclined to call on Negroes only when workers of their own race have been taken care of, meaning you left with the scraps again. But you got a master's degree, but you got a bachelor's degree. For the solution of this problem, the miseducated Negro has offered no remedy whatsoever, except to go get a job. What Negroes are now being taught does not bring their mind into harmony with life as they must face it. Reality. At one point I was staying in New York, and I was just so happens to be in Lake George at that time, reading a newspaper. And in that newspaper, it was USA Today. And it says that if you are born in poverty, your chances of dying in poverty is 99%. The education that you receive has taken you nowhere. Maybe as an individual, but as a whole, no. We can't, as a whole, if we were to be separated away, as most people or as some people, especially those Black nationalists, want to separate, yet we can't even make Pampers for our babies. We can't make shoestrings. We can't make shoes. Do we have any industry making any of us such? I'm just saying. Sad but true. Shouts out to Dr. John Henry Clark. 100. We still have nothing, yet we are the richest slaves in history in the U.S. We've had slaves in Africa way before that began, but that's a whole nother story. Don't want to go down that rabbit hole with you. Staying on the topic, yet we have nothing. Even your education, your master's degree has did little for, you know, the Negro boys sent to college. The Negro boy sent to college by a mechanic seldom dreams of learning mechanical engineering to build upon the foundation his father has laid, that in years to come he may figure as a contractor or consulting engineer. The Negro girl who goes to college hardly wants to return to her mother if she is a washerwoman, but this girl should come back with sufficient knowledge of physics and chemistry and business administration to use her mother's work as a nucleus for a modern steam laundry. I hope you got that. I hope you got that. A prime example of today would be how the Chinese and every other ethnicity of people go to school over here in the U.S. and work over here in the U.S. and send money back to help in some kind of way. Even if they don't open their own steam laundry, they're still helping sending back to take care of. You have to start there first. But the concept is the same. A white professor of a university recently resigned his position to become rich by running a laundry for Negroes in a southern city. You mean to tell me we can't have our own laundry business? There's laundromats all over in your neighborhood, but do you own one? Who collect those coins or those swipe cards, cash, that you don't get yet? We can buy heroin, crack, mollies. We can do all that as a whole to be a junkie as a people. Yet we can't use those same resources to uplift us, to make us somebody like we once were. Because what you are now is not what you once were. I'm just saying. A Negro college instructor would have considered such a suggestion an insult. The so-called education of Negro college graduates leads them to throw away opportunities which they have and to go in quest of those which they do not find. Whew. Carter G. Woodson. Smack, 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 smack. Oh, you got that. In the case of the white youth of this country, they can choose their courses more at random and still succeed because of numerous opportunities offered by their people. But even they show so much more wisdom than do Negroes. Now that, would you have to agree with that? Because they employ their own people. Not that they're, would they have to be smarter? Sad, but true. For example, a year or two after the author left Harvard, he found out West, a schoolmate who was studying wool. How did you happen to go into this sort of thing? The author inquired. His people, the former replied, had had some experience in wool, and in college he prepared for this work. On the contrary, the author studied Aristotle, Plato, Marsiglio, and Padua, and Passacius, Rodbertius when he was in college. All of these philosophers and people of importance in their culture. He studied. His friend who studied wool, however, is now independently rich and has sufficient leisure to enjoy the cultural side of life, which his knowledge of science underlying his business developed. But the author has to make his living by begging for a struggling cause. Sound familiar? Does it sound familiar? Workers versus thinkers. Now, like I said, if you're one of those people who take care of people, you're in the medical field, you're making 100 grand, or if you, whatever you do, some people who work for the government don't even make 100 grand. So I find that those who are in the field of medical are more important than the people that's in government positions, because we are in the position because of government positions. I'm just hey, it's great to be back. You dig? An observer recently saw at the Marketeer's office a striking example of this inefficiency of our own system. He often goes over there at noon to buy a bit of fruit and talk with a young woman who successfully conducts a fruit stand there in the cooperation with her mother. Some years ago, he tried to teach her in high school. Mhm, but her memory was poor and she could not understand what he was trying to do. She stayed a few weeks, smiling at the others who toiled, who toiled, who toiled, and finally left to assist her mother in business. What? Y'all better stop playing. You all need to share this video. You all need to share this information. This is today's information back in 1933. And it was never meant for you to understand the concept of that because of what took place with the North Atlantic slave trade. You say you've been emancipated since 1863, officially 1865, whatever, however you want to chop it up. Yet and still, the Mexican seems smarter than you are, than we are, because we've been here longer. They can come from Mexico, have some illegal papers. Some don't even have papers. And you see what they do. With no formal education, with no formal education, but you say that you're educated. I just read one scientist who said that he was educated at one point, but it took him a while to get over it. You got that? The miseducation of the Negro. The miseducation of the Negro. And remember, that young girl whom he taught in high school smiled at those who toiled. And she was working a fruit stand. Smile. Can you imagine what she was thinking about? The toilers? Not the thinkers, but the toilers? Because that which they teach you in high school don't prepare you for life. That's why many millionaires have never been to college. And yes, they prepare you for college from high school, but most millionaires, a lot of them, have not been to college. Something to think about. Maybe that's why they stopped teaching economics in high school. They stopped teaching economics in high school back in the 80s, the late 80s. Y'all think about that. She learned from her mother, however, how to make a living and be happy. She learned from her mother. She learned from her mother how to make a living and be happy. Not going to educational institutions and not being happy. I bet she didn't have a big receipt bill stating how much she owed to the government. She didn't have a bill from her mother like you all had from the government, like I had from the government. Y'all think about that. Powerful. This observer was reminded of this young woman soon thereafter when there came a visit to him, a friend who succeeded in mastering everything taught in high school at the time and later distinguished himself in college. This highly educated man brought with him a complaint against life, having had extreme difficulty in finding an opportunity to do what he was trained to do. He has thought several times of committing suicide. Sounds familiar? A friend encouraged his despondent man to go ahead and do it. The sooner, the better. The food and air which is now consuming may then go to keep alive someone who is in touch with life and able to grapple with its problems. This man has been educated away from the fruit stand. Damn! Smack, smack, smack. Did you get that? Just like you're miseducated from having your own business, from learning to be self-sufficient, you're learning from being self-sufficient to self-dependent. The miseducation of the Negro, every ethnic person on this planet or culture of people, besides the people who look like me, who educated society, which makes it even more of an buffoonment of not to do this for self. Elijah Muhammad told you to go and do for self, but you still didn't listen to him. You listened to Martin Luther King, who told you to integrate, who told you to integrate. Now, granted, we just had King's birthday a couple of weeks ago, maybe 2 weeks, going on 2 weeks. And yes, I told you all in a community post to teach your children about this man, not just for great things that he did, but for that which you have access to know that he did. And you have access to a lot of which he did. But would you, educate yourself on that which you have access to? Many of us don't. I'm just saying. The friend has been trying to convince this misfit of unusual opportunities for the Negroes and businesses, but he reprimanded his advisor for urging him to take up such a task when most Negroes thus engaged have been failures. If we invest our money in some enterprise of our own, said he, those in charge will misuse or misappropriate it. I have learned from my study of economics that we had just as well keep on throwing it away. Upon investigation, however, it was discovered that this complainant of most others like him have never invested anything in any of the Negro enterprises, although they have tried to make a living by exploiting them. Why? Because we're trying to do what they're doing. Sad. Sad. We see this every day. You send your child to educational institutions of the country and they still come out dumb. And you wonder why. Even you as a parent have taught your children to build something for themselves, working for themselves versus being independent. If you ask my children, they would tell you, Dad said, always invest in yourself first. How many of you all even pay yourself first, even if you work a 9 to 5? Meaning that how many of you all put money aside for your own self before you begin to pay anything after you got your paycheck? Many of us, and I say most of you all, because I try to put aside whatever I get, I pay me first. That is what? Self-sufficiency. Pay you first and pay the others later. But many people, the non-thinkers, pay other people first. Now you have to pay your bills. You have to pay your creditors. You have to do that. But if you don't put $10 to $20 in your pocket first for you, I will have to question your intelligence. I don't care how much you make. It's not how much you make, it's about how much you save, right? How much did you save out of what you make and what you spend? Because in the end, you're going to have to rely on that which you save because you've already spent what you had. I'm just saying. Moving right along here. Upon investigation, however, it was discovered that this complainant and most others like him have never invested anything of Negro enterprise, although they have tried to make a living by exploiting them, but they feel a bit guilty on this account. And when they have some apparent ground for fault finding, they try to satisfy their conscience, which all but condemns them for their suicidal course of getting all they can out of the race while giving nothing back to it. Sounds like a lot of entertainers. Sounds like a lot of athletes. Sounds like a lot of Black successful people who have made it, yet have not come back to give anything but to take. Look at Michael Jordan. What did Michael Jordan do for you? How many Black people is it in America? How many Black people in America wear Jordan gym shoes and buy them consistently since 1983? I'm just saying. Y'all better stop playing with me. Huh? LeBron James, another one. What has he done for us? Nothing. What has Kobe Bryant done? Nothing. Nothing. What did Barack Obama do? What did Barack Obama do? Nothing. Man, y'all better stop playing with me. We are 32 minutes in this live. Nobody's saying nothing. Y'all should be ashamed of yourselves. I'm just saying. Share this video. Share this video. Share the information. Like, subscribe. We got 17 chapters in this book, and we're only on the 5th chapter. I've given you all time enough to digest that other 4 chapters, which was previous to this chapter. It is my hopes that you've been keeping up. Or are you being consistently miseducated away from the fruit stand, away from the peanut stand, away from the corn stand, away from the popsicle stand, away from your dreams, away from your talent of being self-sufficient? Hey, you got a family, you got a mom, you got a dad, you got 2 children. The mom and the dad is working. The children, when they get older, they begin to get a part-time job. Have they ever thought about pooling some type of money from that particular home and making a business? The answer is no, because the evidence is in your community. Excuse me, neighborhood. There. Because white people have a community. They have things running and functioning on their own. They don't need the government, but they get government perks because they have a business. But you don't get nothing because you have nothing. You have nothing. But you work every day and you got a master's degree. A master's of what? You got Boyce Watkins. Have all of this economic, empowerment, words of wisdom. And he's telling people to do this, to do that. But how many actually have come with him to do something? Just like all of these big YouTubers. The big YouTubers making $70,000, $80,000, $90,000, $100,000 a month. Have they come together to do anything, to show you anything that they have combined their talents to do as a Charleston White as a whole, to do something for people as a whole? Charleston White, he does community service work, kids, this and that. How many other people have tried to pool with him, or even with Hassan Campbell, or with General Rossetti, or the other guy, the green dude? I'm just saying. How many people? There's a lot of wise teachers out there. Big YouTubers. How many of you all come together to show other people that what you talk about, even signing at a TV, you know, what if you all did together to show people this is what we're doing? We can bring all of our knowledge that we have together to build versus going for self. This is something that the master teacher, Amos Wilson, always talked about. That's right. Shouts out to master teacher Amos Wilson, who always spoke about how we've been educated and reared to be an individual versus a whole. This is exactly what he's saying. Yet you see other ethnicities and culture of people doing this, yet you run away from the fruit stand. You're a mechanic, but your son don't want to do mechanics, but you don't try to teach him the importance of it. Maybe you do, but maybe he's been miseducated from the school system to not only learn the foundation which you've laid, but also go on to be a mechanical engineer versus just a mechanic. Y'all better stop playing with me. Crazy, but 100. What we got here? Oh, that's been covering that all the time. I'm sorry about that, you all. I've been in. I've been in, hoping that you're in on this conversation. The miseducation of the Negro. Gossiping and scandal mongering Negroes, of course, come to their assistance. Miseducated by the oppressors of the race, such Negroes expect the Negro businessman to fail anyway. Whew. Man, y'all need to stop playing to get this book. Share the information. They seize then upon unfavorable reports, exaggerated the situation, and circulate falsehood throughout the world to their own undoing. You read such headlines as Greatest Negro Businesses Fail, Negro Bank Robbed by Its Officers. And the twilight of Negro businesses. The miseducated Negroes then stand by saying, I told you so. Negroes cannot run business. My professors pointed out to me years ago when I studied economics in college, and I have never intended to put any money in any Negro enterprise. Yet, investigation shows that in proportion of the amount of capital invested, Negro enterprises manifest about as much strength as business of others similarly situated. Negro businessmen have made mistakes and they are still making them. But the weak link in the chain is that they are not properly supported and do not always grow strong enough to pass through a crisis. The Negro businessman then has not failed so much as he failed to get support of Negroes who should be mentally developed sufficiently to see the wisdom of supporting such enterprises. But we don't. Sad but true. I want to take you back in the 60s real fast with this. With Snick, who was all fighting to eat at Caucasian establishments, even though they weren't wanted there. Why would you want to spend your money with someone who don't want you there? You mean to tell me that you didn't have sense enough to say we'll open up our own hamburger stand over here? Or did King influence you to continue to integrate? His dream was his dream, or was his dream your nightmare? I understand King to an extent, but when he led people down the rabbit hole of integrating and closing their businesses to teach your own children how to run that which you have established, sell it, get rid of it. We had our own cab stands, we had our own bus lines, our own stores, things that were needed to be sufficient. We even have clothing lines to this day that is owned black millionaires like Kanye West. But look what he wants you to pay. Why can't he just open the business in the hood around the country? How many hoods around the country? Why did he have to go through Adidas? I'm just saying. If he went through his own enterprise, he wouldn't have had to have worried about them doing what. And now they say Adidas have to pay him, but I'm just saying. You can mainstream your own ideas, your own product, your own business through your own selves if you can fully gain the concept of that. But many of us are miseducated, not understanding anything that I'm saying or that this man is saying or any other great man before you that has came before you. Marcus Garvey, Elijah Muhammad, Drew Ali. Even Drew Ali has some weird stuff going on, but he did leave you some things. He was just a forerunner of Marcus Garvey and Elijah and Malcolm. You've had sisters who've told you the same thing, black women. There are movies about black women all over the planet of their greatness by thinking. What did it say? The girl was not miseducated away from the fruit stand. I'm just saying. Yet, investigating shows that in proportion to the amount of capital invested, Negro enterprises manifests about as much strength as businesses as other similarly situated. Now, the highly educated Negroes who have studied economics at Harvard, Yale, Columbia, and Chicago will say that the Negro cannot succeed in business because their professors, who have never had a moment's experience in this sphere, have written accordingly that whites, they say, have the control of the natural resources and so monopolize the production of raw materials as to eliminate the competition of the Negro. Apparently and consequently, this is true. All things being equal from the point of view of the oppressor, he sees that the Negro cannot meet the test. The impatient, highly educated Negroes therefore say that since under the present system of capitalism, the Negro has no chance to toil upward in the economic sphere, the only hope for this bettering his condition in this respect is through socialism, the overthrow of his present economic regime, and an inauguration of popular control of resources and agencies which are now being operated for personal gain. This thought is gaining ground among Negroes in this country, and it is rapidly sweeping them into the ranks of what are commonly known as communists. Do y'all remember that at one point the Black Panthers were handing out communist pamphlets? But all these people sleep in the bed together, but they tell you that they are bad for you. They say that the Russians, the communist people, the Chinese people are bad for you. Yet the U.S. is in debt to China. How much? The communist man. They looked upon him as the rice eater at one point and tried to wipe his country out with heroin. That's what the U.S. did to China, tried to do to China, tried to wipe them out with heroin. But the Chinese say, uh-huh. Now who's got the gun? I hope you got that concept. I'm just saying. Mhm. There can be no objection to this radical change if it brings with some unselfish genius to do the task better than it is now being done under the present regime of competition. Russia, hey, Russia so far has failed to do well with this particular thing under a proletarian dictatorship in an agricultural country. But whether this millennium comes or not, the capitalistic system is so strongly entrenched at present that the radicals must struggle many years to overthrow it. And if the Negro has to wait until that time to try to improve his condition, he would be starved out so soon that he would not be here to tell the story. The Negro, therefore, like all other oppressed people, must learn to do the so called impossible. The uneducated Negro businessman, however, is actually to work doing this very thing with the miseducated Negro has been taught to believe cannot be done. This much handicapped Negro businessman could do better if he had some assistance. If he had some assistance. Oh, if he had some help. But our schools of turning out men who do as much to impede the progress of the Negro in business as they doing or try to do to help him, the trouble is that they do not think for themselves. How long y'all been seeing me preach this? Yes, I'm a preacher. Yes, I'm a teacher. That's why I can bring you this information undebated. Undebated. I had to actually leave the school system not just because of the jabs, but the curriculums that they're teaching your child. Most educators just go to get a paycheck. Hell, if you was to actually have a real student, which they are far and few, but when you have a star student, that star student actually becomes smarter than the teacher because the student is still studying, the teacher ain't studying nothing because many of them are there just for a paycheck, not to educate your child. And like I said, how many of you all who have been educated live in a household with 2, 3, 4 y'all got bachelor's degrees and master's degree and yet don't have one business? Are you really a master? I'm just saying. If the highly educated Negro will forget most of the untried theories taught to him in school, I'm going to repeat that. If the highly educated Negro will forget most of the untried theories taught to him in school, if he could see through the propaganda which has been instilled into his mind under the pretext of education, if he will fall in love with his own people and begin to sacrifice for their uplift, if he, the highly educated Negro, would do these things, he could solve some of the problems now confronting the race. 1933. Who else was around in 1933? Marcus Garvey. What was around in 1933? Elijah Muhammad. Who was before them? Drew Ali. Who was after them? Who brought this same message to you? Malcolm X. Do you see the? But not only that, you had other Black entrepreneurs. Some of those videos you can see right on this channel. MOPOWERZ. Go up under the uploads and you'll see them. And I'm still not done with that because there is so much that I have to upload. There's a lot of things I want to enlighten you all on, and we're getting to that. But as I stated, I've been bending the map, but I've been uploading a lot of things on the Mo Show Chicago. I would not go past 6 or 7 days without posting a few videos on this channel. And this just happens to be one of the day. Just one of today. One of many, may I add. This book is outrageous. During the years, we have learned much of education and business administration departments in Negro colleges, but if they be judged by the products turned out by these departments, they are not worth a continent. The teachers in this field are not prepared to do the work, and the trustees of our institutions are spending their time with trifles instead of addressing themselves to the study of a situation which threatens the Negro with economic extermination. Recently, the author saw the need for a change of attitude when a young woman came almost directly to his office after her graduation from a business school to seek employment. After hearing her story, he finally told her that he would give her a trial of $15 a week. $15 a week, she cried. I cannot live on that, sir. I do not see why you cannot, he replied. You have lived for some time already. Hope you got that. And you say that you have never had permanent employment and you have none at all now. But a woman who has to dress and pay board, she said, and how could she do it on such a pittance, such a low wage? The amount offered was small, but it was a great deal more than she is worth at present. Damn. Smack, smack, smack. In fact, during the first 6 or 9 months of her connection with some enterprise, it would be of more service to her than she would be to the firm. Coming out of school without experience, she would be a drag on a business until she learns to discharge some definite function in it. You have to know it. You have to know it. Did you got that? So just think, if she had went to school and already learned how to work the fruit stand from her mom, what danger would she be? How bright-minded would this person be? But they don't even go back to see their mother or value that which their father taught them or the skill that they had. Because when I was coming up, we had a lot of skilled masons, black mechanics. We had black stores, moms and pops. We had that. That was enough to start on. But with the closing of trade schools, industrial schools in inner cities, and a lot of other distractions that they threw along the way, like drugs, crack, and heroin, yes, totally miseducated from the fruit stand to the drug man. Your education went more hood people from the fruit stand to the drug stand, killing your own people. And after you make your economic empire, the feds are coming for you. I'm just saying. Look at Rick Ross. Hell, they even got a new series, a new season coming out on Franklin. The Snowfall. Yeah. If you really look at it, that's the thing of Rick Ross. You know, if you want to level it out. But needless to say, she was worth how much? Instead of requiring the firm to pay her, she should pay it for training her. Damn. Negro Business Today then finds the miseducated employees as heaviest burdens. Thousands of graduates of white business schools spend years in establishment and undergoing apprenticeship without pay and rejoice to have the opportunity thus to learn how to do things. The school in which Negroes are now being trained, however, do not give our young people this point of view. They may occasionally learn the elements of stenography and accounting, but they do not learn how to apply what they have studied. They do not learn to apply what they have studied. The training which they undergo gives a false conception of life when they believe that the business world owes them a position of leadership. They have an idea of business training that we used to have some teaching when it was thought of that we could teach anything that we have studied. Graduates of our business, sorry about that. The book is going down. Graduates of our business schools lack the courage to throw themselves upon the resources and work for a commission. The large majority of them want to be sure of receiving a certain amount at the end of week or month. They do not seem to realize that the great strides in business have been made by paying men according to what they do. Persons with such false impressions of life are not good representatives of School of Business Administration. Not long ago, a firm of Washington, D.C. appealed the graduates then of several of our colleges and offered them an inviting proposition on the commission basis that only 5 of the hundreds appealed to responded, and only 2 of the 5 gave satisfaction. Another would have succeeded, but he was not honest in handling money because he had learned to purloin the treasury of athletic organization while in college, and it is still going on today in college. All of the others, however, were anxious to serve somewhere in the office for a small wage a week, but you got a master's degree. I'm just saying. Recently, one of the large insurance companies selected for special training in this line, 15 college graduates offered them of accredited institutions and financed their special training in insurance. Only one of the number, and was speaking of 15, however, rendered efficient service in this field. They all abandoned the effort after a few days, tried and accepted work in hotels and with the Pullman Company, or they went into teaching or something else with a fixed stipend or fixed pay until they could enter upon the practice of professions. Did you hear me well? Did you hear me well? This live has been going on over an hour right now. Never have I expected this live to go over an hour. But this information that I'm giving you is critical. Critical. Share the information. Share, like, subscribe. Especially if you look like me. And that's another problem. We don't support people of positivity. We support negativity. If you lying, let me ask you a question. How many of you all support your new devil rappers? Your new devil rappers? Your new demonic industry of music? Now you say, Mo, you got some music up there. Yeah, it's old school gangster music. It ain't talking about turning into no devil. It ain't talking about killing your mama. It ain't talking about doing perks. I'm just saying, yes, it has a little bit of self-destruction, but the world we're living in is self-destructing. And we have to live in the conditions in which this world has made, or for us to deal with the cards that we have. But as learned people who have went to institutions of this country can say that you're educated, yet look at the condition of your people. And you would have to ask yourself as a whole, as the famous Amos Wilson would say, you've become an individualist. You've become an individualist. While other nations around you, the Arab, the Chinese, the Caucasians, the Japanese, the Mexican, the Puerto Ricans, are all self-sufficient. Yeah, you being the first person on the planet are not and don't have a crumb of anything. Sad, but true. But you got a master's degree. The schools in which Negroes are now being trained, however, do not give young people this point of view. They may occasionally learn the elements of stenography and accounting, but they do not learn how to apply what they have studied. I hope you all learned and understand that concept. Graduate of business schools lack the courage to throw themselves upon the resources and work for a commission. The large majority of them want to be secure of receiving a certain amount of money at the end of the week of month. Did you hear me? And only 15 of those people who the insurance company paid for, only one of them stuck to it. Many of them quit. Recently, one of the large insurance companies selected for a special training, those 15s that I told you about. The thought of the immediate reward, short-sightedness, and the lack of vision and courage to struggle and win the fight made them failures to begin with. They are unwilling to throw aside their coats and collars and do the groundwork of Negro business and thus make opportunity for themselves instead of begging others for a chance. Y'all better stop playing with me. Somebody need to say something in the chat room. The educated Negro from the point of view or comments and industry then shows no mental power to understand the situation which he finds. He has apparently read this race out of that sphere, and with that exception of what the illiterate Negroes can do blindly, the field is left wide open for foreign exploitation. 1933, 90 years ago. The miseducation of the Negro. Share this information. Share this information. Foreigners see this opportunity as soon as they reach our shores and open and begin to manufacture and sell Negroes, especially such things as caps, neckties, and house dresses, which may be produced at a small cost and under ordinary circumstances. The main problem with the Negro in this field, however, is salesmanship. That is where he is weak, but he can sell dope on the corner all day. The mind is a terrible thing to waste. The miseducation of the Negro. It is unfortunate, too, that the educated Negro does not understand or is unwilling to start small enterprises, which makes the larger ones possible. If he cannot proceed according to the methods of the gigantic corporations about which he reads in books, he does not know how to take hold of things and organize the communities of the poor along the lines of small businesses. Such training is necessary for the large majority of Negroes conducting enterprises have not learned business methods, and do not understand the possibilities of the field in which they operate. Most of them in the beginning had had no experience and started out with such knowledge as they could acquire by observing someone's business from the outside. One of them, for example, had waited on a white business club and passing members a box of cigars or bringing a pitcher of water. When they began to discuss business, however, he had to leave the room. You understand that? I hope you all got that. About the only time he could see them in action was when they were at play, indulging in extravagances with the Negro learned to take up before he could afford them. Meaning, you saw the dream. While you were the worker, he was the thinker. You got that? They are usually operating in the dark or of a method. They cannot secure intelligent guidance because the schools are not turning out men properly trained to take up Negro business as it is developed and what it might ought to be rather than find fault with it. Too often, when the founder dies, then the business dies with him, or it goes to pieces soon after he passes away. For nobody has come into sufficiency close contact with him to learn the secret of his success in spite of his handicaps. We just spoke about that. We just spoke about that. No need to waste no more time on that. I hope you got that. Share this information. This last hour has been phenomenal information of today back in 1933, the miseducation of the Negro. The business among Negroes to continues individualistic in spite of advice to the contrary. The founders does not take kindly to the cooperative plan, and such business education as we now give the youth does not make their suggestions to the effect convincing. If the founder happens to be unusually successful too, the business may outgrow his knowledge and becomingly too unwidely in his hands may go to pieces by errors of judgment or because of mismanagement. It may go into the hands of whites who are usually called in at the last hour to do what they call refinancing. But what really that means the actual taking over of the business from the Negroes. The Negroes then finally withdraw their patronage because they realize that it is no longer an enterprise of race and the chapter is closed. Wow. Absolutely mind blowing. All of the failures of the Negro businesses, however, are not due to troubles from without. Often the Negro businessman lacks common sense. And as I've always told you, we've been robbed of our common sense. I'm going to say that again. Often the Negro businessman lacks common sense because you've been what? Miseducated. Meaning that you have a what? Malfunction. But yet you say you're a master, especially those masters of education. You know, those teachers and principals, masters of education. Masters of failures is what you produce. Sad, but true. I'm not lying. Don't you argue with this man in your own life, okay? Don't argue with me. Argue with your own life and where you're at in your own life and tell me that I'm not telling you the truth as someone who looks like me. The miseducation of the Negro. All of the failures of the Negro business, however, are not due to troubles from without. Often of the Negro businessman lacks common sense. The Negro in business, for example, too easily becomes a social lion. He sometimes plunges into the leadership in local matters. He becomes popular in the restricted circles, and men of less magnetism grow jealous of his errands, meaning of his upcomings. And men of less magnetism grows jealous of what this man, woman has become. He learns how richer men of other races waste money. He builds a finer home than anybody else in the community. And in his social program, he does not provide for much contact with the very people upon whom he must depend upon for patronage. I hope you all got that. I hope you all got that. He has the finest car, the most expensive dress, the best summer home, and so far outdistances his competitors in society that they often set to work a childlike fashion to bring him down to their level. And that is chapter 5, you all, of the Miseducation of the Negro. I had no expectations that it would go an hour and 12 minutes and a half and over. Never expected it. But I tell you, this has got to be one of the flyest lives I've ever done. The information that I've just brought you. You say, well, you already know that. If you know that, why haven't you done it? That means you have a maladjustment. I'm just saying. Think about it. Remember, knowledge is power. We'll be back later on with some uploads that you're going to love. You're going to love. And knowledge is power. Don't ever give up on your dreams. Don't ever give up on your dreams. And by all means, don't be a miseducated Negro.